wanted this for you. I wanted a totally different life. A steady paycheck, kids, a family.
Dad.
Tell me there's a way out of this. Not a quick one.
We would like you to transfer to another prison and befriend someone to elicit a confession.
We suspect that this man killed 14 women, but we only have one of the bodies.
Larry has vivid dreams.
Tell me about him.
In my dreams, I kill women. Those are just dreams.
In this prison, we're the guys.
Maximum security specializing in the criminally insane.
You want me to check into hell and befriend the demon. Not for all the money in the world.
How about freedom? Paul's conviction's on appeal. He could win and walk. You had the chance to stop him. Don't approach him too early or he'll know we sent you for him.
Why are you looking at me like that? Like you know me.
If it gets out that you're here to snitch, that's going to be a very unfortunate day.
Accelerate your timetable. If he walks, he'll kill. Again and again.
If you think you could be in danger, you are in danger.
Hey there, this is Joe Williamson. You're listening to Monday Morning Critic Podcast.
Joe, so let's get right into it. Let's dive. I'm a big fan of your work. For those listening, just a few entries in your IMDb are Ford versus Ferrari, Here and Now, Blackbird. So you've clearly, an established actor. The part I find interesting before we get into acting is that the first, I'm going to say 10, 12 years of your life, you're a Michigan kid, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. So my parents split up when I was 1 year old. So Obviously it was my fault. And I was the straw that broke the camel's back. And my dad moved to Ohio and I went with my mother who lived in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. That's where she had been born and raised.
Right.
And yeah, I lived with my mom until I was in 6th grade. And then I moved to Troy, Ohio, which is a small town just about 20 minutes north of Dayton. And, ended up going to school, high school there, went to college at Ohio State. And now when people ask, I generally just say I'm from Ohio. But I definitely have some Michigan roots in there too.
Yeah, if they do the full story, why is a Michigan kid going to Ohio State, but clearly not your fault? So
it's funny. My older brother and my stepfather are both Michigan alums, and I'm Ohio State alum. So that's always fun around the game time.
Yeah. Joe, was it tough? I mean, obviously it's a personal question and you don't have to answer, but is it tough, having the family dynamic kind of affect you that young where you're moving and things are happening? Is that tough, Joe?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's always hard. I remember one of my first memories is, being a little kid and throwing coins into a fountain at like a mall. And my wish was always that mom and dad would get back together. That's like one of the first things I remember. But, in the grand scheme of things, I think everything in life is about a mindset. And I'm very, my parents aren't together, but I have a mother and a father that love me very much and support me. And I'm luckier than most. So just because we weren't together doesn't, I don't have anything to complain about.
That's a great mindset. So Joe, is acting something that progresses later in life, or is it right around the age of 12 that you start to get that, the feel for it?
I did some school plays and stuff when I was younger. And then when I got older, I got mostly into sports. played football and basketball and baseball. And so that really kind of took over. And then in college, I was kind of that typical case of I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I've always been a big reader. My stepfather's a lawyer, so I had a political science degree. Wow. And my track was always that I was probably going to go to law school. And then I took some theater classes for fun. And that kind of planted a little seed in me. And then I remember I started noticing, like, I would be watching TV or I'd be watching a film and I couldn't really even concentrate because I'd be like, I want to do that. Like, I want to be up there. Like, I think that, like, and I'd be like examining choices and like, oh, why did they do that? Or, and I had like favorite actors that emerged and I was like, oh, I want to do that. So I remember telling my father, who had, fortunately for me, had put me through college. He had paid for it. I didn't have student loans. I was very fortunate in that regard. And he said, what are you going to do? You're a few months away from graduating. And I said, Dad, we were having a beer in the Gulf of Mexico, I remember. And I said, Dad, I think I'm going to go to LA and I think I'm going to try to be an actor.
Wow.
And it was very quiet. And he kind of just looked at me and then he said, all right, well, how about I drive you out? And 6 months later, me and him drove cross country and he moved me into LA.
Wow. And that says a lot kind of about your dad because he paid for your education. A lot of parents in that position would be like, no way. I paid for this. You're getting something 9 to 5 every day. And for him to drive you out there, holy cow.
Very fortunate. Now, I do think looking back, probably him, probably most of my family, probably all my friends were like, all right, he's going to go out for a year and then realize how hard it is and how challenging it is. And he'll be back. But, I came out and it's funny. I always say one of the worst things I think that happened to me is in the first 6 months I was out here, I didn't know anybody. I didn't know anything about the business. Truthfully, I didn't really know anything about the art, but certainly not the business. And one of the first things I got headshots. I got an agent somehow, and I booked like 3 national commercials in the first 6 months. So I got into SAG. Back then, 20 years ago, commercials really paid a lot of money. So I've got these huge checks coming in, and I'm thinking, well, everyone said this was hard. Like, this is easy. And then cut to like 2 years later, I haven't worked. I'm bartending. I ran through all my money.
Oh, man. Yeah, it is so tough. And you mentioned earlier there was actors that you liked or a movie or a show. And I asked this of many of my actor guests. Who is an actor maybe had a profound effect on you or a movie? And I'm sure there's many. I mean, I get that.
There's so many inspiring people and inspiring performances. And it just, like I'll turn on anything that Denzel Washington is in. I will just turn it on because I just want to see what he's going to do. He's just, even on screen, he's never in a room where he doesn't seem like the most powerful person. Even if he's not playing the powerful person in that scenario, he's just imbued with it. I find his work inspiring. And then there's performances like, Joaquin in Joker. I thought that was incredible performance. My favorite movie of all time, a movie I wouldn't, if you said you wanted to change even a single frame of it, I would fight you, is Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, dude, we're good. Dude, hey, Joe, we're good. We're good. Like, we're good. You can't.
Yeah, we're not in the room right now, but I have that same poster up. And it's funny how life works because back in 17, 18, I booked a series playing, and Tim Robbins was my father-in-law. So I get to work with Tim Robbins, who's in my favorite movie of all time. And it was just, it's just funny.
And being an Ohio guy, that's where they filmed it.
Yeah.
So it's like, wow. Yeah. I mean, that movie, that is, if anyone ever asked me, or I'm sure you, one movie to bring to the desert island, that's it. It's game, set, match. I mean, you rewatch that movie and it's like it's still as powerful as it ever was.
I know. I have a 12-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son, and I keep asking my wife if I can show it to him yet, and she's like, "Wait a little bit longer. Like, wait a little bit. They're not quite old enough yet." I'm like, I want them to see it. They have to see this movie. And then getting a chance to work with Tim. I mean, it was. I don't know. It's just sometimes life works out pretty funny,
Do you tell Tim, look, man, and Andy Dufresne is my guy? Like, do you tell him when you talk? I mean, or is that not professional? How does that?
I think as this, because we did one season, and that's a whole other story I can get into if you want. But it was 10 episodes, and so at first I didn't. At first I tried to play it cool, although I'm sure he could be like, "Oh, this guy likes Shawshank." Like I'm sure he could just sniff it out by now. But yeah, at the end, when I got closer to him and we'd worked together for a while, I ended up sharing it with him.
Yeah, how do you not? You have to.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's awesome. And my last Ohio question is, I know you live in LA now. Are you a Bengals guy? Are you a Rams guy?
I'm a Bengals guy at heart. So I do root for the Rams. I like the Rams, but when the Super Bowl happened, we actually went to the Super Bowl. A bunch of my family came out, and we all went to the Super Bowl. And I wore the ugliest Bengals coat, sports jacket you've ever seen in your life. And I mean, I like the Rams, but I love the Bengals.
Yeah. They should have won that. Bengals should have won that game.
It was close. It was close.
Won that game. Yep. Yeah. I thought they outplayed them. I thought they deviated a little bit, but that's a conversation for a different time. So just getting into some of your work here. I'll jump into Ford versus Ferrari, man. I knew your work really well, and I thought I saw you in Ford versus Ferrari. Then I confirmed it on IMDb. What an experience! Mangold's a genius. A cast like that, Joe. I mean, we talked a little about Tim Robbins. You look at Bernthal. You're looking at Matt Damon. Bale, who maybe is a top. He and Damon are just top 5. I mean,
yeah.
How do you make? I don't want to make it sound like you're a fanboy because that's not it at all. But like, I mean, if I was a football player and I walked onto the field with Brady, I'd be blown away. So like, how do you kind of like? Are you in a learning mentality always? Are you? I mean, you're clearly a pro's pro. So how's that approach, Joe?
There's always still more to learn, and obviously you're working with people who have been the highest levels of this business for a long time. So there's a lot, Bale and Damon and Bernthal and Mangold. I mean, it was definitely a learning experience. I got a lot out of it. It was just a really cool job to be a part of. I worked on that. I think I had like a 10-week contract on it. I'm playing a guy named Don Fry, who my stepfather worked almost his whole professional life at Ford. In the legal department, and Don was a Ford executive, and my stepfather knew exactly who he was. He was a little before his time, but my uncle, because a lot of my family is in and around Detroit, and so a lot of them worked for Ford. My uncle had worked really closely with Don, so it was just this really cool experience. And then, to be on set and watching Mangold. I remember one day we're on the racetrack, and there's probably, the whole cast is there. There's probably 500 extras. There's a lot that's going to be done in CGI, but there is also the cars and there's people, and they're trying to figure out this certain shot. And Mangold's like, just give me a minute. And I see it, and I'm watching him. I'm like paying attention to him, and he's looking around, and you can see him just putting the pieces together in his head. And he's like, it just takes a minute, and he's like, all right, so here's what we got to do. And it blew me away. It's like, that is a brain that was born to be a director.
Yeah, visionary. That's the definition of visionary.
Yeah. I can't decide what I want for lunch, and he's just out there like making all these decisions and seeing everything. It was really cool to see. I really enjoyed working with Mangold, and then you see, you're working with Christian Bale, you're working with Matt Damon, and these guys have been killing it forever. And, they get up there and they try stuff. And it's not like they're magic human beings who they come on set, they do one take and everything's like, oh, it's perfect. Like, no, sometimes they have to figure it out and feel it out. And, as someone who's aspiring to that, it's like, oh, yeah, you still have permission to do that. You still have, it's not a science, it's an art. So you get to go there and figure it out and feel it out and see what happens. So that was really cool to see.
Yeah, and you talk about, we talked in Shawshank earlier, rewatchable movies. The ending of that movie, man, I've probably seen it 1,000 times. I watched it last night. When Damon is narrating and Bale is going around the track and the kid is watching his dad, and Damon's got that voice, where there's a point where everything becomes a blur at 3,000 RPM, whatever he says. Yeah, I got to tell you, man. And then when they proceed to where he goes to see Damon in the shop, I forget the actor's name. I'm so embarrassed. He had a beer. He goes, sometimes they just don't get out of the car. Like, it's just, dude, it's just like, I can't stop sobbing. Like, I can't. Like,
was that I think that was probably Ray McKinnon.
It's Ray McKinnon. Yeah. The fact that I forgot that. Yeah. I have a movie podcast and I forget Ray McKinnon's name. That's really good. Yeah. Really well done, Derek. Yeah. But when he has that scene and then the kid watches his father pass and then Matt goes to see him with the wrench, dude, it's like, it's nonstop tears. Like, it's, I know. It is such a beautiful movie. Beautiful. I mean, I can't, you mentioned your daughter was Shawshank. I had a friend who had never seen Ford versus Ferrari. This is over the winter. And he came over, we watched it for the very first time. And he was like blown away. And I love when people see that. Like, I love when people see something that I love, Joe. So
it feels cool when you're like sharing something with someone for the first time and you see their reaction, it's awesome. That was a great job. Probably my favorite day on it is, I don't know if you remember the airplane scene when Matt Damon's character starts flying. So
yes,
it's me, Ian, and then John and Matt, and we're in this tiny little plane, and there's another actor named Drew in it, and we just sat in that plane for most of the day shooting the shit, like Matt's telling stories, and and then probably because I have like there's a lot of stuff in that film where like I have a couple lines here or a couple lines here, and probably the thing that people, if they mention Ford Ferrari to me, they're like, oh, the airplane scene when you're like shit. And that was just totally just kind of, I did it one time, and then I remember I asked Mangold, I was like, was that too much? And he goes, well, if it's too much, I just won't include it. And then he ended up including it, so that was cool.
Yeah, there's days when you're an actor, like you mentioned before, where your commercials are going great, and then you're bartending, and then there's days like you just talked about, which make those days so much more worth it, right? Those days where you're just on the plane listening to Damon shooting this great scene. Yeah, man, those are the great moments. Yeah. And to your point, I mean, this career in this industry, no matter what level you're at, it can be so up and down. But you just kind of got to go along for the ride. And, the lows can be low, but without those, the highs aren't nearly as high, So you have to, so it's all part of the path, I guess, Yeah. And talking with you briefly, I know you're a family guy, and, I have a daughter relatively new. And I got to tell you, just that scene hits. Yeah, the scene hits me so much more at the end where he's watching his dad, just like, and to know that actually happened.
Yeah,
it makes you gasp a little bit more. It's like, oh, this poor kid.
I know, and it's so tragic. And he is such a an accomplished and great driver. Just like we were talking about Mangold being born to direct. This guy was born to be a race car driver, and he's doing practice laps, and it happened. And that was one cool thing about that show. So when I met Christian for the first time on that, he, for the role in Ford Ferrari, I mean, he was rail thin. I mean, so skinny. At the same time we were shooting previews for his role as Cheney were coming out, where he put on all the weight.
A lot of weight, yeah.
So I'm seeing him in person, like emaciated, and then seeing him on TV and 150 pounds heavier or whatever it was. And it was just really, I mean, that guy has gone through, he's dedicated himself through some real body changes.
I don't know how they do it. I mean, I have a beard. I put on 45 pounds, so I don't know how that happens. It's funny that you talked about Shawshank, because I feel like your role in Blackbird, which, can I just tell you how much I effing love this show? There's those shows. There's sometimes I get caught because having a family, like it's like you have to plan accordingly, right? So if you put a time aside for a show, it better be good. Like you hope it's good. And there was one on Prime that didn't work for me,
Yeah.
But this one, I can't wait for Fridays or Thursday night. I'm like, come on. Oh, before we get into the show, what do you prefer, Joe? Do you prefer a weekly drop or here's like a Stranger Things all at once?
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's so hard. And I know that there's so much, science and algorithms and research that goes into this. I think based on where I am in life, like you said, with 2 kids, so you have to be very strategic about when you're going to watch or so I mean, having it all available at once would probably be my preference. But I also do, I think with a show like this, it is pretty heavy and it's pretty dark, and maybe a little time off in between isn't such a bad idea.
Yeah.
And it is cool in terms of like the lead up and the anticipation. And I what you just said, I've heard so many times is people see, I hear it both ways. People are like, I can't wait for the next show. I'm dying for Thursday night to get here. And then I've also heard a lot of people say, they can't wait to watch, but they're waiting until all 6 episodes are released so they can sit down and do the whole binge thing.
Right. Yeah, and you're so right with that. And it's funny because you look at some of the best movies of all time. Cool Hand Luke, American History X, freaking Green Mile is right there.
Yeah.
Shawshank. They're about prison and the constraints of life, and they're about all these things, but it's the beauty in these movies that make them iconic. I can't think of a more, I know this is like a duh question, but I can't think of a more frightening place to be than prison, especially when I look at Blackbird, from the riots going on, from shady correctional officers that really well. So all this stuff is happening, and the plot. So before I ask this question, let me ask you this: what you play a correctional officer that is a little too good. When I first saw it, I turned to my wife when you first appear in that first episode or the second episode, I was like, oh, he's way too nice. Something's up. And then we find out. What do you, any research you put into being a correctional officer? Do you find out the ins and outs of that?
Yeah. So there was a series I watched on, I forget what the streamer was. It's a competing streamer, so I won't even say it, but, it was about correctional officers, and a Supermax facility in New Mexico.
Okay.
So I watched that. And then I also referenced, obviously I've seen Shawshank a million times.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shows of probably the last 5 years is a show called Escape at Dannemora.
Okay.
Ben Stiller directed it. It is Benicio del Toro, Paul Dano.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and watched that again. And, it's funny because when I first appear in episode 2, I was trying to walk the line of, I think sometimes there's this idea that every single interaction in a place like that is one of like hostility or antagonistic. And so I wanted this guy it wanted to just seem like, okay, he's checking in another guy. He's done it a million times. He's not going to go out of his way to be a jerk. Because this guy is the guy I play, Carter, he's a user. This is his little kingdom, and these are his little playthings. And until he knows how he might need to manipulate someone or what he can get from someone, he's not going to reveal his cards. So he's just going to seem like he's a decent guy. And then we find out, otherwise.
For somebody who hasn't gotten to the show yet, and I never recommend anything that I don't believe in. Like this, I believe, oh my God, like it's the one thing I cannot wait for. So to describe the show, I would say it's about a person that's convicted, Taron Egerton, convicted of drug dealing, gets a 10-year sentence. They'll waive this sentence if he can, because there's also a separate story about a serial killer who has killed 14, 15 girls. And they want him to. They make a deal where the Taron Egerton goes into the jail, and if he can get the serial killer to confess, they'll waive his sentence. That's basically a rough synopsis of the show.
Yeah, so Taryn plays a guy named Jimmy Keene, and it's crazy because this all happened. It's all based on a true story. So Jimmy Keene, Taryn's character, gets sent to prison for drugs, for guns, and at the same time, Paul Walter Hauser plays
Larry Hall, right?
Larry Hall.
I know that finally.
Yeah, Larry Hall has. They think this guy has killed 14, 15 girls. They only really have him on one, and there's a chance he's going to get out on some technicalities on that. So they have to get the goods on him. They need to make sure this guy does not ever walk out of prison again. So they come up with this scheme, and they transfer Jimmy over to, and Jimmy's this gregarious, tough, good-looking, charming guy, and they transfer him over to befriend him and see if he can find out information that they could use to, further prosecute him. So to make sure he does not get out of jail. The book is called In with the Devil. Okay. And it's just an amazing story. It's the fact that this really happened. And then, so you have the book and you have the story that actually happened, but there's a lot of amazing stories out there. You have to know how to translate that for the screen. And Dennis Lehane, our showrunner, the acclaimed novelist / screenwriter, the material, Derek, was just it was amazing. We sat down over the whole cast over a weekend, did a huge Zoom reading. We did, because there's 6 episodes. We did 3 episodes on a Saturday, 3 episodes on a Sunday. And I think everyone after that was like, holy shit. We have got something amazing here. Like this, because any project, it all starts on the page. I firmly believe that every great movie you've ever seen was a great script. I don't think you can take, or it's very rare to take a mediocre script and it turns into a great project. I think great projects sometimes turn into mediocre, end results. But I think you have to have great material to have a great project. And we just did. I mean, every script was just amazing. And then, the cast that Dennis put together, Taryn is so good. Like Taryn's one of those like chameleon actors. He just takes on the skin of whoever he's playing. And, and he's this Welsh kid who's playing this, Italian kid from Chicago. Yeah. And then Paul I love Paul's work so much.
He's mesmerizing in this.
Yeah.
Like any other actor who tried this would fail. He makes this work somehow. And it's creepy as all hell. Like, I don't know how he does it.
You know what? Well, you know what he does? You know what I find so appealing about his work is just the little details and the little nuances, the little physical tics he gives his character. Like in episode 3, this isn't a spoiler or anything, but he eats a piece of bread and he eats it from the middle, like just a psychopath.
Yeah.
And it's just this little thing, the way he like touches a wall, and he's just got these little tiny details that you add them up and they build this incredible performance. And seeing the stuff between him and Taryn, and we're really going to get into it now in these last 2 episodes, it's really it's beautiful work. It really is.
It is beautiful. And I have the cinematographer Natalie Kingston coming on next week, so I'm psyched.
Oh, amazing!
Yeah, she did a great job.
Yeah. She's so talented, and she was a absolute joy to work with. And a lot of that shot in a prison, which there's physical constraints and lighting, obviously, in your space, and she did a great job. She was wonderful,
phenomenal. And the other thing I want to say before I get to a couple more plot points is that it's one of Ray Liotta's last works, and it's just he's so good, and you're moved by it for 2 reasons. 1, because he's fantastic, and 2, because he's passed, so it's like a double whammy, right?
I know. It's almost it's hard to like watch it. I mean, his performance is so amazing, but that's like the last TV he ever did, and I know that he really cared about this project and he really believed in it. My first day on set, my first scene is it's mainly a scene between Taryn and Ray, but I walk Taryn in and I have just a brief interaction with Ray. And so I'm of the age where, we talked about iconic performances before. Henry Hill is just like, come on.
Right there. Yeah.
So I just, I walk up and I'm like, hey, Ray, I'm Joe, a little nervous. I mean, I'm not too proud to admit it. And we shook hands and he's like, you were great on the table read. You did this one thing I really liked. And I was like, I mean, that made my day. And he didn't have to do that for me. He didn't have to share that with me.
Wow.
And it was really great. It was just really great. I'm glad I got an opportunity to work with him and just to see him and work. And that scene that him and Taryn have is a really beautiful one.
Yeah, and Joe, one thing that confuses me, I don't know if you're able to say anything about this, but like they put the in memoriam, I guess, after the third episode. Does that mean he's not going to be in the? I mean, I don't know if you could say this. Does that mean he's done filming? He was done filming after that, or could he show up? Because IMDb says 5 episodes, so I don't know.
No, he's in more.
Okay, good. Okay, because I was confused why they put it after 3 and not after the last one, but I gotcha.
Yeah.
How tough is it to play a correctional officer, right? Because I thought I heard you in another interview say somebody said to you, you got to stay you got to be you got to be a face, you got to be the good guy, and CO Carter is anything but a good guy. Like he's terrible. Like forget prison, like you have to deal with inmates that every prison has COs that are like this. Like it's like, oh God, now I got to deal with this person.
Yeah,
so it's like how difficult is that to wear that skin?
Well,
or is it fun? I mean, it could be.
I got to tell you, it was fun, and in terms of wearing that skin, when I got the role, Dennis told me that he wanted me to put on weight, so I ended up putting on. I think they had asked me to put on 20 pounds. I think I put on closer to like 25, 30 pounds. That train is hard to stop for me once I get rolling. So, in terms of the physicality, it was because we're in New Orleans. It's the oppressive summer heat. It's COVID, it's hurricane season. We got evacuated at one point. So there were a lot of like challenges in that regard. But in terms of playing the role, it was a lot of fun. And Dennis, because I know Dennis personally, and he came to me and he said, I think I have this role that you'd be good in. And I was like, oh, that's great. Awesome. I mean, I love his writing. I think it's so awesome. And then he's like, now I should say I've never seen you play this type of role before. And there's 2 sides of an actor's brain. And one, I was like, this is amazing. I'll get to stretch myself, show something I haven't done before. And then the other part is like, well, maybe, is there a reason I haven't done this before? So I really dove in, and fortunately for me, because almost all of my stuff is with Taryn, and he's a young movie star, and he was just an absolute delight to work with. We had so much fun, even shooting, and I won't say anything for people who haven't seen it, but even shooting some real contentious scenes, we just had so much fun. And he's such a giving actor. We would try things different ways. I would have an idea and be like, is that cool with you? And he'd be like, yeah, let's try it. Like he's a great actor. And it's also nice knowing that when you're in a scene with him, that people are pretty much just going to watch him, and so you can kind of do whatever the hell you want.
Yeah, no, you're fantastic. I mean, you have to be fantastic, right? Because it sets up, because your character really creates that, like, so forget, like he's feeling the pressure from all sides, and your character is big in feeling that. And I mean, what's at stake is his freedom. I mean, that's, his father's sick. There's so much pressure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, think how much he has at stake. Take out my character, and he still has this just huge, overwhelming, intimidating job to try to do, to try to befriend someone that, they're telling him they think he killed 14 girls. You got to get in this guy's good graces. And then his father's outside having a stroke. It's a dangerous, violent place. They tell him flat out, if you do something that gets time added to your sentence, that's outside of this. Like, you'll serve that. So he's got to navigate all these really dangerous, shark infested waters. And then you throw my character in too, like just makes it even harder.
Yeah, I've been trying lately to pick. Why does he owe 10 grand? I'm thinking it's got to be betting, and then I'm like, maybe it's drugs. I mean, you can't say it, but like
it's not really referenced in the script, but so that was really fun for me because I could just be creative, come up with whatever. I think I really tried to approach Carter more so than I have any other character as I just tried to have. I tried to be egoless, and not that Carter is egoless, because I don't think anyone walks around in the world without some hint of ego. But as I was preparing to play him, I just really tried to I'll throw all that away. Like, I think Carter is. I think he's not very. I don't think he's the brightest guy, but he's very street smart. He's sly. I think he has. I think he's. I think he has, a failed marriage. He's got, a daughter that he doesn't have a good relationship with. He's an alcoholic. He gets in trouble. He gets himself in situations that are way over his head. And so that's in the outside world. And then the contrast for me, which was really fun to play, is, and then he goes inside the prison walls where he has a little bit of power. And, a lot of the show is examining toxicity of, masculine toxicity and power toxicity. And so here's a guy with, you give him a little bit of power, and is he benevolent with it? Is he kind with it? No, he's the opposite. He abuses it, and he tries to just use it for his own personal gain. And so it was honestly, it's one of the highlights of my career so far, just getting to really dive into this guy. It's been a lot of fun,
and you're so freaking good at it. Like, it's so great to watch. And after the last episode, when they're cleaning the cafeteria and they're having this, you have some funny comments about their date. As they're talking, but because when Jimmy says to you that, or Carter, which he says, he can't get the money, and you're like, okay, tried to be a friend, and Carter's going to tell the entire prison that his father's a cop. That's coming, and it's like, and then he lied to Larry when he said my dad's a fireman. So he's gonna go. And I know Larry's gonna say, well, you told me your dad was a fireman. Why would you lie? So I see where this is going, and these last 2 episodes, I cannot wait, Joe. Like,
I know. I can't wait. I can't wait too. It's very exciting. It's funny, that prison cleanup scene. So right before we started, one of the physical things I figured out for Carter was that he walks and with his hands behind his back. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm always walking like this. So that cleanup scene, they're doing like the time lapse of the cleanup. We were filming that all day, and I'm walking around the background, and then I yell at him at one point. But I'm just stuck all day with my hands behind my back walking around. I was like, oh, why did I choose this? This is.
Have you seen the entire series? Have you seen it on the final product?
Not the final cuts. I saw some footage. I saw some rough cuts and stuff, but not this finished product. No.
What can you say about the last 2 episodes? I mean, obviously you can't be specific, but what can you say generally speaking?
Buckle up. I mean, it lives up. If the first 4, I think, have really set the bar, and I think everyone is super invested in the show, and it pays off. It's worth the final 2 episodes. It's worth the final 2 hours. I guarantee that.
And Joe, your character had a. Thank you for all this time, by the way. I have 2 last final questions for you. Your character had a quote, and it got me thinking. It said, you said you were having a conversation with Jimmy. You were saying, it's just the gift that keeps on giving. It's amazing because you hear that quote a lot. I think that started with Christmas Vacation when he gets a Jelly of the Month club. And it got me thinking, Joe, about how many how much movies like even Shawshank, like hope is a good thing, a good thing's never. So like you always hear these quotes that's the power of cinema and what they create. Like they create things in society. I think Step Brothers has a bunch of quotes too, but like isn't it amazing, Joe, how much movies the power they have?
Yeah, how things just seep into the zeitgeist, and then all of a sudden everybody, you know, quotes this one movie, or a situation happens and you're quoting, you know, Step Brothers, like you said, or Ron Burgundy from Anchorman. And, you know, it's so cool when things like that, they do find their way into the culture. And it's been a really cool experience working on this, because it is getting a lot of attention, and a lot of people are just really invested in it. We have friends that are staying with us right now, and they just got in yesterday, and they landed and they'd watched the 4 episodes on the plane, and they're like, at LAX, they're like, holy shit, it's amazing. Like, when I want to watch the next 2. Like, it's just really, it's exciting. It's exciting to be a part of something like that you really, you know, because sometimes you're working on something and we all believed in it. We all think we have something special. We're reading these scripts. We're seeing the performance. We're seeing the job Natalie's doing shooting this. We're thinking this is going to be great. But sometimes things like that fall through the cracks. You never quite know what's going to hit and what's going to not. And so to be a part of something where the public reaction matches what we all thought while we were making it, that's really fun.
You know, and you brought up a good point before, Joe, when you said, you know, it's a really phenomenal book, but it's like getting that on screen is completely different. Like, there's some bad movies that were phenomenal stories. They just couldn't. Yeah. They couldn't translate the source material. That's the problem.
Yeah. Well, that's why, I mean, we were in such good hands with Dennis, because he's such an accomplished and acclaimed and talented novelist, but he's also equally accomplished and acclaimed and talented as a screenwriter. Yeah. So he knows both those worlds like the back of his hand. So he knows what works for a novel, or what works for a book, and what works for, you know, this format. So we were in such great hands with him.
Joe, are you watching anything in your own time not related to Blackbird? Are you watching anything? Do you stream anything on your own?
Well, my wife and I just finished Severance.
Oh, it's a great show. Yeah.
It's so good. Yeah. It's so good. That season finale was just fantastic.
Yeah. Cliffhanger. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm also watching We Own the City on HBO with Bernthal, actually.
I saw that. He plays an absolute nut in that show. He's nut
so good.
In that. Yeah. He's a nut. Well, that's awesome. And I got to tell you, Apple TV Plus has so many good shows. For $4.99 a month, it's a steal. It's a steal. You know,
$5. I mean, it's a cup of coffee. Then they have some great stuff. They really do.
Joe, what's around the corner for you? Any future projects? Anything you want to get off your chest or out there? I'd love to hear it.
Right now, there's a couple things I'm kind of circling, but nothing's set in stone, so I can't really talk about it yet. But we'll see if it works out. I've got a couple exciting things going on.
Joe, is it tough to my last question? Is it tough to balance family and professional life? Because I feel like, you know, acting can take you anywhere, right? And then you're clearly a family man, so it's like, is that? I mean, people have the same problem even if they're not actors. They could be traveling. Is it tough to manage stuff like that?
It can. There's stuff that, like, I've turned down opportunities for because, like, I don't want to be in Toronto for 10 months of the year, you know. It all depends. So, you know, I think, Derek, there's 3 reasons why, like, an actor takes a role. There's the material is fantastic. There's the people that you're working with, the people that are associated with it, and then, you know, frankly, there's money. So if you get lucky, you get all 3. Right. Most of the time, maybe you get 2 or what, you know. But yeah, where we're shooting is absolutely a factor in my decisions these days. You know, this shot in New Orleans, I spent a lot of the summer in New Orleans, but this material was so fantastic. I would have traveled across the world to shoot this material. I would have gone anywhere, and it was great because the thing is, you know, if I'm going to be away from my family, I really hope it's a situation where I like the people I'm working with and we can have a good time. And this was that in so much. Like, I loved all these people. We had a great time when we weren't on set. You know, we had a great time on set, but it was worth it for me to do that. Yeah. It's still hard. You know, you miss your family. They got to come out and visit, which was great. But you got to make those sacrifices sometimes.
Yeah, a lot of people do, man, and I'm glad you are for a selfish point of view because I love it so much. But Joe, I'm a big fan of your work, and thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, Derek. This was a lot of fun.